Righto. What I thought we'd do is have a look at new scripted Airboss. The Airboss function's pretty cool. You see it on a lot of servers. I notice a lot of people don't actually use it, so I thought I'd take the time to run through it because it is really good. We have it on our server, so I've got it sitting here. We'll jump on to one of the carrier start missions, and when you jump in, you'll see the top right will get Airboss Dennis, welcome Naval Aviator Penny. So you'll quite often jump onto a server and see that pop up, which means the Airboss script is running. It's pretty functional, so I'll just clear chat. Look at that. And I'll just bring the comms menu up. Comms menu. So I use voice attack obviously, but in this case I'll just use some of the menu to show you what we've got. So in here you've got Airboss, and if you've got multiple carriers using Airboss, they'll be listed here, but in this case we've got Stennis. The main one you first want to look at when you get in here is in the kneeboard, which is carrier info. So if you bring that up, tells you what the carrier's doing. So we've got its recovery ops underway, final bearing, BRC there, how much wind's on the deck. The important things you need though are the Marshall radio 285675 and LSO 308475 and the TACAN. The rest is just info. Airboss puts a recovery tanker up, which is flying around at 6,000 feet over the top of the carrier group, and it also gives you some windows. So comms menu. The other thing I do when I first get into the Airboss script is in the in the help menu. You can check the comms just to make sure they're working, but you've just got to make sure you've got the right channel up. So we know we had 308475 for LSO, so we'll do a radio check with the LSO.
Paddles radio check.
So Paddles radio check comes back, and we had in 3 was Marshall, and I'll just do that on voice attack. Action radio check Marshall.
Marshall radio check.
Okay, I'll leave it in Marshall, and I'll just chuck the TACAN on to 74. 74 and on. There we go. And we'll get up pretty quickly. Let's chuck 15 degrees of trim in there, and then normally if I'm just flying around the carrier, I'll just fly around with checklist up like that. That'll do, and I'll just set this to 375 for coming back. Oh no, those will steering's in high, and we'll taxi down and get on the cat. So Airboss controls everything, so the plane guard's there, and if you do splash off the end of the deck, I'll just get rid of these, it will come and look like it's picking you up. It's quite interesting. There's a couple of other things you can do with Airboss, which is set section. So we can, if you have someone within 100 meters of you and you request to set your section, which I'll have a look in a sec, they will join your section. You'll operate as a section coming into the Marshall and for recovery. So carry comms menu. So if you had any other Airboss, Stennis, and you can see we've got kneeboard, set section. So if I set it now, that'll put me in lead.
501.
We are, so we're registered me lead, but there's no one within 100 meters because I'm only flying solo on the server, and they would have joined if they were instantly joined in as 2. Anyway, let's get airborne, and we'll head out to 10 miles, then come back into the Marshall. Far on. So normally in voice attack I silence these menus, but so I can do everything via voice with Viacom Pro. Alright, we're all ready to go, and we'll leave it in the Marshall frequency because that's what we're going to come back on. Gear up. That tanker would be getting the Watto, coming that close to the group. Righto, so I'll just increase the speed and I'll head out at 500 feet and get out to 10 miles. So the idea of the Marshall is once we call request Marshall, they'll expect us to fly to the Marshall stack at the altitude they assign us. So the bottom of the stack's 2,000 feet, so Angel's 2, and then every 1,000 foot above that. One side of the hold, so it's a left-hand orbit that starts over the carrier with a 5-mile diameter. So the upwind side of the hold is the climbing side, and the downwind side is the descending side. So it's sort of important to remember that if you've got other aircraft in the stack. So outside 7 miles we can start our climb up. And the other thing I need to do is get down below trap weight to come back, so we might start dumping some fuel and take that down, weight it down a bit. Righto, so the reason I want to go outside 10 miles is that just your see-me distance for the carrier. So we'll turn back in, request Marshall, and they'll tell us to contact see-me at 10 miles. Not modelled, you can go all the way into the Marshall stack and they'll pick you up there. But we'll just start a turn in now. And request Marshall. So in the menu, comms menu, if I go to Airboss, another Airboss Stennis, you'll see request Marshall. So we can request that and we'll get instructions because we're on the Marshall frequency.
501 case 1, expected BRC 07 degrees. Hold at Angels 2, expected Charlie time 1036 hours. Altimeter 2992, report see me.
Okay, 29902, report see me, Angels 2. We're at Angels 2 and we need to be there by 10 miles, so that works pretty well for us. And we just track straight into the carrier. So normally we would call Enfield 11 see me 7.3. And they'd clear us into the Marshall. So we come on in, what's our trap? We're 33 and a bit, that's fine. So fuel dumps back off again. Right, so coming into the Marshall, normally you'd slow right up to your min fuel holding speed and just trundle around the pattern, but we'll just keep the speed up for the interest of keeping this video short. I'll just hold 350 coming in there. So the aim is to enter the Marshall pattern around the carrier. So if you picture you come over the top of the carrier like you would for a brake, and then fly a 5-mile left-hand orbit, that's your Marshall pattern. So once we enter the pattern, Marshall will say they've got us in the pattern at the right altitude, and away we go. And you keep flying around the pattern until you get cleared for case 1. And then in this case, because we're the only ones here in the bottom of the pattern, we should get cleared.
501.
There we are. You arrived in the holding zone. Altitude is good. So the idea is to just...
501. You're cleared for case 1 recovery.
Alright, so he's cleared us straight in for case 1, so we're only going to go around, and as we go around through the 180 in the hold, we will get instructed to proceed for initial. So that we could do manually by requesting commence from the menu, but in this case we'll just keep going. Comms menu. So you can see you've got other Airboss, Dennis. Okay, request commence there. So that would be the next one. So we will just keep it going around, and as we go through the 180,
501.
there we are, proceed to initial. But we could request that if we didn't have it yet. So that's cleared us now. We're at 4.4. So if you're between 4 and 5 miles of being the carrier there, we don't have to keep the turn going, staying within 5 miles, because we're cleared to proceed to initial. So we can lower the nose. The hook would come down in the Marshall stack, and we will proceed out. And we want to be on initial at 3 miles, running in towards the carrier for the break at 800 feet. So the requirements for Airboss here is to be below 1300 feet, which we are now, otherwise it won't register our initial. So I like to head out around here 5 miles, and technically you should be at 350 knots coming into the initial, but we'll come in a little faster just because we can and there's no one else around. And you want to line yourself up to pass just to the right hand side of the carrier on the BRC. Now you can do all sorts of fancy stuff here and have the ILS on or whatever you like, but I think given the weather we'll just do it visually. Okay, so at 3 miles, as we descend down to 800 feet, we're hooked down. They will call us initial, and we'll come in at 500 knots.
501.
There we are, initial. Now we're looking to have a look at the deck, make sure it's clear, and once we go into the break, we transfer to LSO. So COM2. Deck's clear.
Fast.
And we're fast. So he's calling us fast, but that's okay because we are fast. We knew that. Brakes out. And away we go. Loading on the G. Because I'm fast, I'm going to need more than 4G. We'll need a bit more than that. Keep the turn going. Gear down. Okay, so as we slide back down to the carrier, we're just slowly easing it down 600 feet, and the flaps are coming out, and we're on the LSO frequency. As we pass the beam, we'll get paddles contact.
Paddles contact.
There we go.
You're high. You're fast.
And as we can see, it's down the ship, we will start our turn now. So that is to trim it into the bracket. Away we go. And we just fly a visual approach,
You're high.
aiming to cross the wake at 350 feet or thereabouts. So you get some pretty erroneous calls coming around here. You're high, you're slow. It's all based on the actual angle of attack instantaneous to the aircraft, not what really the speed you're doing. So it depends how sensitive you are on the stick.
Call the ball.
So Roger ball.
Roger ball. You're slow.
Slow, that's because it's instantaneous slow. There we go. So we just keep flying that bracket all the way in. Looking at the ball, you want to fly the Hornet a little bit low because that's where it likes to sit. And we're looking to trap a 3Y maybe. There we go. And 3-wire, 2.0 slow, slow in the middle, slow in close, 22.7 the groove. Righto, and snag the hook for some reason. Haven't had that happen for a while, but anyway, we're going to get dragged all the way back on the hook. There we go. Alright, we're off. So yeah, the approach gets critiqued pretty hard with Airboss. So that was a 2-point. I didn't think that was too bad. I didn't think we were that slow all the way in, but anyway. It did. So that's how the script works. So there's another couple of functions that are pretty useful that Airboss has. One of them is allowing you to do practice patterns. So if you're on the deck here and you're taxiing for departure, you can ask for an emergency landing and it puts you in the bolter queue. So we'll have a look at that as we're setting back up again. And basically that means your next step in the pattern will be the beam and paddles contact. So it means you can take off, do a quick left hand turn, back in, downwind, hook down, gear down, flaps down, and paddles contact, and just practice your next landing. So if we come on to the cat again, bar on. And trim. Action emergency landing.
501, roger.
Here we are, technically in the bolter pattern, your next step after takeoff is a beam. So we can just take off and fly straight to the beam point now and get graded for the next landing. So that's a pretty handy Airboss function that you might want to use. Comms menu. Some of the other functions that are pretty interesting in here. Request refueling, which will take you out of the pattern, and you can head to the recovery tank and refuel, and then request marshal again and come back in. If you're coming in and you want to spin because you're too close behind the aircraft in front, it does happen, especially if you're flying section. Just let them know you're spinning, and away you go, and come back around again. They'll always let you do it. In the kneeboard, you've also got a results, which gives you your greenie board basically in there. Who's in what queue. You can get a weather report for the carrier. The skipper menu is pretty interesting though, so it allows you to control the carrier, start different recovery options, and stop the recovery. So quite often you'll jump on a server and there's no recovery running, so you'll have to start whatever recovery you want. Otherwise you'll just be marshalled and sit in the hold until you do start the recovery. And it takes about 3-5 minutes before the carrier's on the right heading and is recovering. And the U-turner here will send it back to where it was when the recovery started, so you can turn that on or off. In the results, you can get your grades, your last debrief, the last landing if you want to see it again. That's pretty handy. If we go back to the previous one, in the F8 here, reset my status, so that'll take you out of all queues. That's pretty handy if you've messed it up and you've decided you'd like to just start again in the sequence. And you can turn all those subtitles on and off, which I normally have off, and the trap sheet here is recorded on the server, so you can turn that on or off as well for each landing that you're making. And that's about it. So that's a bit of a quick run through with Airboss and how it works. I'll do one with section next time, but that's hopefully explains it, because it is a little bit weird when you first see it and you don't know where you're supposed to be flying, but that's how it works. Some will allow you to smoke the or flare the Marshall pattern. This servers, we don't have it set up that way, otherwise people would be using it and it's just annoying and it looks terrible. So that's an option sometimes as well. So there's a quick run through with Airbus. I hope someone finds it useful. See ya.